I hope you enjoy this special episode from the Idea Citizen Summit, Career Growth and Development, brought to you by Cohesion Smart Building Technology. Learn more at cohesionib.com.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I have a terrific duo with me today, Mike and Harit. Mike is the founder and CEO of MikeWorldWide, a leading PR agency known for its reputation-first approach and culture of trust. And Mike has over 4 years of experience. He has helped shape the growth strategies of global brands, public affair groups, healthcare innovators alike. And as a self-made entrepreneur who built and scaled an agency of nearly 300 people, Michael brings a grounded perspective on growing with purpose, leading under pressure, and building teams that last. Hello again, Mike.
How are you?
Good. So happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And I also have with me Harit. Harit is a leadership coach and a senior product leader with 17 years of experience in tech, which is sizable. And he's known for helping high performers step into visible, influential leadership roles. And with a background in leading strategic programs at SAP and working closely with CXOs, Harit brings deep insight into what it takes to lead with clarity, confidence, and intention. Hello, Harit.
Oh, and hello to everybody who is on the call. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And I'm your host, moderator, whatever you want to call me. I'm Sabreen. I'm a creative brand marketer with a growth marketing wired brain, if that makes sense. And I currently lead community and creator strategy at Buffer. We're a social media management tool for creators and small businesses. On the side, I'm also a podcast host. So if you're interested in self-improvement focused stories from real people with real experiences, go check out The Lavender Fix. We just introduced ourselves with our titles, which is fitting because that's exactly what we're here to unpack. How do we grow beyond titles? What does leadership look like when it's not tied to a promotion? Or how do we navigate identity, credibility, career growth when the usual markers don't really tell the whole story? So, Mike, I'd love to start with you. Reputation plays such a critical role in career success. How have you seen people cultivate influence beyond their roles?
Well, I mean, I'm the person here with the long experience, and so I guess I'm the oldest and have a lot of experience, mostly because of all the mistakes I've made. You know, you learn a lot from the things you do wrong. And so when I started my career, I was a 19-year-old in politics. And so this is what I had to do. How was I going to make myself relevant to very powerful people in a very cutthroat industry when I was very young? And so some of this is what I've learned both as my own personal experiences, but also seeing a lot of people do it right and seeing a lot of people do it wrong over 38 years. And the first thing that you learn and you understand after you've done this as long as I have is that cultivating influence beyond your title requires a very deliberate strategic behavior that fosters trust, visibility, and value. And I like to talk, there's many aspects to how you unpack that, but it has to have a lot of intentionality to it. And I like to talk about how you lead through strategic gravitas and how you create that and craft that within an organization, even if you don't have a large title. The other thing that's very important, and I'll take it from the other side, somebody who does have a big title, is that any CEO that really understands how to motivate and manage people understands that the more senior of title you get, it's not as if people do what you want. I've been lucky to witness many young people, mid-level people rise and become massive leaders here or in other organizations. And to a large degree, they all do it in some version of the same way. And there's many pieces to that we can talk about.
Yeah, that is awesome. I do want to ask you a follow-up question, which is with a lot of folks who as you mentioned, that there is a very specific set of characteristics or the way that people approach their career that ultimately leads to some people who are able to do that very successfully versus others who do have the potential, but don't necessarily have the right tools to actually make it happen. Is there a common or recurring theme that you see across the crowd that is able to advance in a meaningful way in their careers?
I mean, there's many commonalities, but one is, not being afraid to take risk, not being afraid to fail, which is, by the way, is a very hard thing to do. I like to, simplify it as like, how do you own the room all the time, no matter who you are or what your title is? Not how you're going to make It's not about being the smartest person in the room. It's not about making your boss feel stupid. But how do you own the room with presence, not position? It's about active listening and framing. How do you reflect and reframe others' input to elevate collective thinking? It's about, calibrating your tone and context. How do you use empathy and authority in balance, whether in a boardroom or in front of a new cohort? You know, how do you visual and verbal clarity speak in a headline phrases that travel beyond the room? But how do you have something to offer and add in a way that will be accepted and appreciated, but not just talk? I can't tell you the number of people who come into a room and they just talk. They want to fill awkward silences. Make sure you have something to say. Be a thought catalyst. Be someone who shows up more prepared with a point of view you can defend, but don't be afraid to fail everyone because you're going to, but most of the time you'll succeed.
I love that. Yeah, and I think that there is a lot of emotional intelligence that comes into play. And with everything you just shared, there is this book by Dale Carnegie. I don't quite remember the exact title. It's a very popular book, How to Make Friends.
How to win friends and influence others.
Exactly. And it's such an important piece of that is leaning in and giving people something to lean on. So you could be the most technically nuanced person in the room, but if you don't know how to build relationships and listen in rather than, as you had mentioned, like filling in those awkward silent slots, then it doesn't really work out. And I have experienced this firsthand in my career. When I was a little bit more early career, I think being the loudest in the room almost felt like the most important thing. But I think as you kind of grow into new roles and get more experience, you realize that you have to take people with you because you can't be an expert at everything. And a lot of these people have to lean in and help you get to where you want to go.
I mean, I think you hit it. I mean, one of the core pieces to this that I've seen is you need to build valued relationships. And that's both up and down. I mean, mentoring people below you creates trust and reputation, as well as making sure most people don't know how to manage up either. And so how do you learn how to manage up in a way that is helpful to your organization versus look at me, look at me, look at me?
Yeah, I think managing up could be a whole other topic of discussion. I have so much to say on that front. Harit, I am going to lean into your leadership coaching background now. Adaptability is so key to long-term growth. And I heard this on a podcast somewhere that successful leaders are people who are willing to experience a very wide range of emotions without the fear of failure. Right? Because failure is such I have to fail fast and kind of learn from that and grow. How can professionals build resilience and stay relevant when the map keeps changing?
I mean, that's a valid point and valid question. I mean, now we are changing too fast, and we have to be resilient that even if we are failing it, how we can move up.
Mhm.
Let me share you one story of mine, what happened with me recently. When I moved to Germany around 8 years back, I was invited to come and start working in Germany by a startup. And within a 3 months, one of the leader called me to the room and they said, leave your laptop and go. We have asked you to come for two projects. None of them are coming because of cost cutting. You have only 1 month of visa. Find your job yourself or go back to India. I mean, that was a very challenging moment. Within 3 months, you are still struggling to understand the people, culture, language. And without that, all of a sudden they are saying and go. It was like a bomb, boom, on you. That was the moment when I felt, no, I don't want to feel loser. It's not me, it's them. They're losing a talent like me, and they're losing somebody who can bring much more morals to them. So I concentrated on top three things which I felt was very important at that moment. Connection. I started looking for my connections, who can help me out, to whom I have worked on, who rely, who trust me actually, because they know what I bring to the table. Second was a clarity that what I personally bring and what I can do. I don't want to jump on every corners and losing my own faith. And thirdly, I was cleaning my emotions. It was a big decision. I mean, coming from Asian background, if you are fired, it means there's a problem with you. And I was controlling my emotions. No, there's nothing wrong with me. And I was very happy that my networking skills worked very well. And within a 1 week, I had a job. It was the learning lesson for me that if I start feeling as a loser, I would not have taken a next steps in my career, or I would have got it something so successfully. When I share this story, I always give 5 lessons also what I have learned it out of that. One was we need to keep on working on our networking skills. And when you're talking about adaptability and today's changing world, the continuous learning. I mean, if you're learning continuously, if you are knowing what you have to do, what is there in the next 5 years, nobody can replace you. These problem comes, but you are ready to overcome these problems. Third, which is I started doing myself 2 years back or 3 years back, when I personally realized how much important is the personal branding. So personal brand is really very important, which everybody must start doing it. And fourth, as I already said, clear my emotions. I mean, you need to control your emotions, that you are not a loser. And last but not least, I mean, always give more time to your supporters, which is especially your family members. In the worst time, they are the one who is standing with you, not anybody else. So these are the 5 things which I would surely say that you need to work on resilience and adaptability in this world.
I'd like to just one, agree with everything you said, but when I was 19, 20 years old, I was very active at just meeting with people who I could learn from or would be willing to mentor me. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was collecting relationships. And a relationship is more than just a cup of coffee. I mean, you have to be active about it. In those days, there was no technology even to do that. It was just calling somebody on the telephone. The fact is that whether I teach my staff or my family, building and deepening relationships is an intentional full-time job. And it doesn't just happen, but it's also fun. If you can get past the nervousness of it and understand what makes people tick and how to open a conversation and do a variety of other things, I have found that I've met tremendous people. In many cases, they became clients or they referred me business. And in many cases, they didn't. But I met interesting people who I liked, I learned from, or frankly, could be useful to a client of mine or be useful to a relationship. I've been collecting relationships my whole life. Again, I didn't know that when I was starting. But even today, my job is, a lot of my job is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Opening, creating relationships of all sizes. And whether that's my most junior employee, who I think is a future superstar, and we're going to deepen the relationship, to somebody who, a CEO or a governor or a senator that can help with something else. But I would want to, of all the things that are critically important, the relationship, people don't truly understand the relationship side of the business and how that is to a large degree. And people want to mentor you. People like mentoring you. Those are the people that are going to help you with your career. So I would really encourage people to have the courage and the intentionality to start meeting people. And again, you don't get success in that first meeting, in that first hour. It builds, but also have the patience to build it and to develop those relationships.
Totally agree with you, Michael, because this is what I told a lot of my mentees as well. I mean, the mistake what we have been doing it. You started networking when you were 19 and 20 years of experience or old. I started it probably 10 years back. And that was the biggest mistake. In today's world, we should start networking from our universities, from a college, from our school, because this is how it's going to take you further. And networking is not, I'm into tech. I need to talk to a tech person only. No, I
No.
will talk to Sabreen. I will get something learn out of branding. We are talking about personal branding. We learn about branding. We'll talk about marketing. So it's not about I will connect with my own thought process people. No, we need to connect with the diverse mindset where you can learn out of it.
And Harit, I think something else to follow up. Many of the people I meet with, they have nothing to do with my business. Again, you spend time with good people, good things happen. I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen, but good things happen. You learn a lot, you meet people, and the ability to be a continuous learner is what something you also said, which I think is critically important. People like interesting people. And so I tell entry level employees here all the time, just like be interested. The fact is that be curious. I don't care whether it's art history or the theater, AI, be an interesting person that has something to talk around the table, and people will follow you. They will want to talk to you. They will want to spend time with you. And I also think it's critically important that people understand that, how do you act with integrity over just optics, right? Optics are important because that goes to personal branding, but people can see right through if you're inauthentic. People follow authentic people. People who think that they're creating this optical illusion, they people see right through that. So unshakable credibility is magnetic. You got to be politically aware, but not political. How do you navigate agendas while stay anchored in values? How do you make values visible in decisions? Lead with principles, not convenience, even when it costs you. I tell people all the time here, if it makes, I have a very simple business philosophy, and that is, if it makes sense, do it. And if it doesn't, don't. I mean, that's it. Now, that's harder than it sounds. But then the next level is just do the right thing, and if it's the right thing to do, everything else will pretty much take care of itself. And so to your point, the two greatest values we have here are curiosity and empathy. So be curious, be a continual learner. And then if you truly, truly put yourself in somebody else's shoes, it's almost impossible to make the wrong decision.
Yeah, this is incredibly important. I mean, there's so much that I can unpack with Harit. A lot of what you said around the South Asian kind of a background. There's so much transgenerational trauma, especially around immigration. And you're always in fight or flight kind of survival mode. And I've lived through that period of being a visa holder and employment authorization stuff. And so you're always in a limbo between roles. And especially if a project drops, then you suddenly have this identity crisis around what am I really doing? What is the purpose behind my existence here, right? Especially in this line of work. And then I think, Mike, what you said about building connections, one example, I currently work at Buffer, but I started cultivating a relationship with them a year ago, and I had originally applied for a completely different role where I made it to the top two, and then somebody else was essentially hired for that role. But I kept that relationship going. I mean, I remember receiving that kind of that rejection email, but it was so personalized and it was so thoughtful that I responded with an equally thoughtful email to say that that's totally fine. When are you free for coffee? And I remember that moment so vividly. And then looking back and realizing that I'm actually at Buffer, which was one of my absolute dream companies to work at, cultivating those relationships early on and really being intentional absolutely matters. So there is a lot of congruence here in what we're talking about. I want to shift gears here for a second. And I want to say that we often talk about this proverbial kind of corporate ladder that there is to climb. But success really isn't about climbing the ladder, especially because I know firsthand that the very first rung of that ladder is often broken for a lot of people. And taking some of the points, Harit and Mike, you just spoke to, sometimes it's because you don't have enough influence or personal brand equity or clout, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes you don't have the right connections in the industry, but that's not really a true marker of potential. And a lot of it is also about timing and visas, as we just talked about. So Harit, you talked a lot about how sometimes the best way to grow is to take a step back, downshift in your career strategically. Can you walk us through how rethinking your role or even shifting gears can actually help you move ahead in your career? And Mike, feel free to jump in kind of also during the course of this topic.
Yeah, I mean, this is important because sometimes when you get stuck, or even if you don't get stuck, you need to come out of your comfort zone, what Michael was also talking about. But you don't realize, are you already in your comfort zone? So sometimes you need to, shook yourself and see where do you stand? What's your next step? How do you go for your next career transition or progression? So something similar happened with me also. I like starting with a tech background. I was doing everything on a product, on a coding and working with customers. And I was loving it. I was enjoying it. And I made one process, built it and grew it, having a regular one-on-one customers. So in short, I was a go-getter. I was a go-getter for this particular approach. And all of a sudden, my manager came and he said, "Hey, Harit, are you okay if you give up this task to your other team members?" I'm like, what are you talking about? This is what I have done it. This is what I have built it. Now I have all visibility over here. You're asking me to step down. And I gave a thought, and I think that was one of the best decisions I have taken it. I always strongly believe that you grow when you make others grow. And then I started giving the all knowledge handover to one of my team members. And I made sure that this guy or this person understand and lead independently. And when he started doing it, I took on my next challenge, which is totally a different what I was doing it. I took that challenge, and within 18 months, I started working with CXOs. I could not even imagine it, because if I had started working on this process, because I said, oh, this was my child, I built it and I don't want to leave it. And that was the biggest mistake I could have done it. So what I learned out of that is, first of all, you need to challenge yourself. Though I didn't do at that moment, but I learned out of that. You need to challenge yourself. if your manager, if your leader, if somebody in your team is asking for a next challenge, most of the people shy because they don't want to come out of their comfort zone. It must be you who raise hand and say, hey, I will take it. And that's how you can grow further. Last thing, I'll just close it so that Michael can share his experience. Last thing, what I have also learned, what I already said, you need to ensure that the people along with you are growing with you. I mean, I can go to the next step only if somebody can replace me over here. So never ever think that you are replaceable and you are scared. It's good somebody can replace you, because if they can't replace you, you will always stuck to this level. You will not get the next opportunity. So let others make, or let others, grow at that level so that you can move to the next one. So this is another thing which I learned. Always try to help others to grow along with you.
I love that.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't ask, you don't get too. So it's and again, there's a way to ask that is appropriate, and there's a way to ask that is not. But I would tell you that there's something else that I think was important when you talked about the first rung of the ladder is often broken. Now, there's issues like visas that are more kind of macro issues, but they impact you. But I think there's another thing just generally. And our intern class started yesterday, and I was speaking to them. And one of the things I said, the most important thing about an internship is not just that you're going to learn a craft of PR and marketing. One, you're going to see if you even like PR and marketing. But the other thing you're going to see is what kind of company do you want to work for? What's the culture? Big, small. There's no right answer. It's just what's the right answer for you. Now, for me, I don't even know if I would work for me today because my company's big. I always like small companies. And so I do work hard to make the company smaller, even though we're big. But I was always the kind of person that I would choose roles, frankly, that had higher risk and that would allow me to reach for things that I didn't even know how to do, but I would figure them out. And there was no job that I wasn't willing to take, big or small. I mean, but in a smaller organization, for me, at least, I was the kind of person that if I'm great, I don't want to wait my turn. I don't want to have to work up this ladder. Doesn't mean I would run over my boss or I was a jerk. I'm saying that I wanted to know that if I did a great job, I'd be recognized. And in a smaller organization, that happens. And at the same time, though, I also understood that if I was not good, I'd be gone because they would notice that too. But I was always willing to bet on myself that I would succeed. And not only succeed, I would over succeed. I think it's very important to take a look at the kind of organization that you want to work at, because there is a culture and a size, and there's no right or wrong decision. But that has a big impact on how you're going to be able to work your way up the ladder. Or frankly, I always thought about what's the next job I'm going to take. And so how do I make sure that I learned everything and did everything and succeeded and did as much as I possibly could and has learned as much as I could? Because whether I wanted to stay in this organization or wanted to go somewhere else, I knew that learning those skills would put me in the position to have options. And the one thing I learned, or many things I've learned, but one of the greatest assets you can have is optionality. Too many people are stuck in a job they hate. They don't want to stay there. They hate the organization. They hate the place. But, you have to pay your rent and your mortgage and your kids go to school and you have a car and you have taxes. And so, but how can you give yourself optionality? So you may pick the wrong option, but the fact that you have it
Yeah.
is one of the great luxuries of all time. And so I would tell you that put yourself in the position to have optionality.
I love that. I have been in roles where I loved the company, but the role wasn't quite specced out based on my aspirations, or I was in a role that was fantastic and I knew that I would grow a lot technically or will have exposure to a tech stack that only a company of a specific size would be able to afford, right? But then you sometimes step into a role where there really isn't a balance between either. And I often call those roles to be like intermission roles, almost like the little advert that you get when a movie
Yeah.
is playing at the theater, and also kind of thinking about what's next and how I can use this as a springboard to at least create some kind of a pathway into that next level in my career. So that really resonated, Mike. That's pretty awesome.
And another thing I think is important, I'm sorry for dominating the conversation, but people confuse not being unhappy with being happy. They're different things. And so again, there are things in life that may force you to stay in a job because you just have to earn a living.
Mhm.
But you're not supposed to be just not unhappy in life. You're supposed to be happy in life. And so if you're just okay, what are the steps you can take to being better than just okay? I'm not saying any of this is easy, but I always find people that find like the goal is to not be unhappy. And I tell my team all the time, and often, like, we're not the right place for you. Go somewhere that's going to make you happy, because that's what life is. Be happy. Go find your happy is a conversation that I have with employees that I love. I just know we're the wrong place for them.
That is such a unique quality in a leader to be able to say someone you care about and you work with and you know that they're doing a good job, but also take cognizance of the fact that they may be able to thrive in a completely different company. Ask specifically in context of like Mike, you said that, you loved working for smaller companies. And with smaller companies, a lot of the times what happens is, especially in this age and time, traditional hierarchies are not necessarily, as they used to be. Now people are more kind of individual contributors working independently and all kind of coming together and making strategic decisions. This is not to say that there aren't levels across organizations anymore, but there isn't as much rigidity. And I surprisingly, actually 2 years ago, came across a lot of people who, when they talked about advancing in their careers, they weren't necessarily looking for a fast track to leadership. They wanted to continue being individual contributors. They didn't really enjoy the manager part of the job. They didn't really want people reporting into them, and they preferred it that way, right? But everybody, regardless of whether you're looking for a leadership fast track or if you're still looking to be a leader within an individual contributor role, people crave growth. And that is essential for us to keep that brain oiled up, right? What is the right way to go about it? Like, how can you still grow regardless of your preference in that sense?
All right, you want to take that?
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, the fact is that there are a lot of people who don't want to be the boss today. It's a very different way of looking at it than when I grew up. Everybody wanted to be the boss when I grew up. Today there's so many more options for someone to be successful. And I also think that how you judge success is not necessarily how Harit judges success or I judge success or you judge success. So you got to figure that out for yourself. But we do an employee survey every year, and I remember a couple of years ago, one of the really findings that just really confused me was that a lot of people didn't want to be the boss. They thought it looked terrible. The fact is that there's more stress and there's longer hours. And so one of the things we set out to actually intentionally here is like, make it look more fun to be the boss. Because, a lot of people just didn't want to do that. There was an article, I don't know, I read this week or last week about how this is a big issue right now with Gen Z, millennial, and how they aspire to have, work is not their life. Work is an important part of their life. And so today in a post-COVID world, there are many people who like the flexibility, who, by the way, can be extraordinary contributors to an organization, make more money, get promoted, do all those things. They'll just never be the CEO or never be the president. And for a lot of people, that's actually not a bad thing.
What I would say when you said, a lot of people don't want to be a manager and handle people, I think I would call it as a purely a myth. I mean, being a leader doesn't mean that you need to handle people. It's a part of it, but you don't need to handle it. I give a lot of examples in a other way around. Anybody can be a leader. Even a fresher in a team can be a leader. What exactly the leader do? I'm a leader, take care of the people. It's not like you just need to say, okay, leave approved like that. No, leader take care of the people. Leader take care of the roadblocks and removes it. Leader talks about, the vision things. Leader support people. I mean, being a fresher, if you are still supporting it, I mean, there's a huge gap, what Michael just said, Gen X and millennials and a lot of other people. Right now, people are struggling. For example, I'll give you very simple examples. People are struggling to learn about Python at certain level. But people, millennials who are or Gen X, who are just coming out of the universities, they can teach you. They can help you. I mean, you show your leadership skills over there. I mean, if you are supporting somebody to come out of their comfort zone, you are helping it.
Yeah.
Even if you're just mentoring somebody, you are a leader. You don't need a title. And this is what we have our own title, growth beyond titles. You don't need a title to be a leader.
Right.
There's a quote that came from Eisenhower when he was a general in World War II. And I'm going to paraphrase it here, so I apologize. But leadership is the art of getting people to do what you want because they want to do it. And so, how do you bring people along for the journey? Because they want to be part of the journey. You can't force people to do things they don't want to do. And if you force them to, they're not going to do it very well. So, I am very much stuck, and I wrote down, I don't know if you know me, I wrote down something you said, Harit, which my staff is going to hear a lot now, and that is grow. When you help others grow, that's how you grow. And I don't know if people understand that maybe your biggest job in leadership is to do that.
I stole your notes, Michael. You didn't know?
There
So
you
I'm gonna
go.
use this a lot, and I'm gonna give you full credit for it. Don't worry.
I love that. And Harit, something you said about, anybody can be a leader regardless of how old they are, and things are changing. I mean, look at all these young B2B SaaS companies. All the founders are fresh out of college sometimes and are, trying to raise money and are able to successfully raise a couple of rounds of funding. That's phenomenal. Actually makes me self-reflect a lot sometimes because I've been in roles where I've worked for founders with like incredible stories where they dropped out of college at the age of 19, entered a business competition, won $180,000 in seed funding, etc., and are now leading double unicorns. And so I think that really exemplifies the point that you made there. I'll pose one last question, which is, what is the biggest misconception about career progression, in your opinion?
All right.
Yes, this time I will take it. You continue later, Michael, and end it with your expertise. I mean, from my perspective, there are two major things which people think it come automatically. One, if you think that your hard work speaks, that's the BS. I mean, you need to create your own visibility. You need to self-promote yourself. And self-promotion doesn't mean that you are bragging about something. You need to create the more visibility that people can understand you are there for the next promotion or for the next role. And if you just see that I'm going to do my 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 based on where you are and you will get promoted, that's totally a misconception. And secondly, I again strongly think that people just leave it about their own career. They need to take their career in their own hands. If they're just wondering that someday they will be a luck and they will get a promotion, no, or their manager will help them to get to a new promotion or to the next role, no. It's very competitive world wherever you are. You need to fight for that. You need to show yourself that you deserve that position, and you can only show it when you start doing those things. If you already want to go to the next level, you need to prove it that you are ready for that next level, and you need to have a discussion with your manager. Your manager will not, I mean, it's his responsibility to help you to grow, but you need to take your career in your own hands. So these are the two things which I would say, like, you need to create your own visibility, your own personal brand, and you need to take your career in your own hands. So which most of the people just give up.
I love
And
that.
I would echo every one of those comments.
I stole your cup.
But I would tell you that, and I would just use the word intentionality. You need to be very intentional about it. Luck is a residue of design. I've never believed in luck.
Love that.
Oh, and so you make your own luck. It's preparation. It's willing to be in that room when you'd rather go home. It's understanding when I say the politics, but understanding just the makeup and the psychology of the organization you work for. How do you work within that organization? But there's a real intentionality to it. You know, I've always, there's only a few ways to truly be financially successful. You have other success metrics, but we're talking about financial. You can inherit it,
Mhm.
you can steal it, you can win the lottery, or you can work really hard. And the fact is, since I didn't inherit it, I don't have any intention of stealing it. I'm not likely I'm going to win the lottery. You got to work hard. And technology makes it harder, not easier, because it's so fast and so present and 24/7. But so understand, if you want to be successful financially, or I would argue in any metric you have, has to be very intentional, and you're going to have to outwork the other people that are. Doesn't mean you run them over, because in the perfect world, you'd all rise up.
Mhm.
You're going to need to outwork the other people sitting near you, and then make sure you're doing all the other things we talked about, so people understand your value and they notice it and they see your contributions.
Awesome. I love that. I think there's just one tiny one from me, which is a lot of us crave a good manager throughout the course of our careers, and it happens for some people, and it's, I would say, very rare, and it doesn't happen for most of us. Or that you have a good manager, but they don't have a teaching disposition. And so a lot of the times you have to take ownership of upskilling and learning, whether that is through an online course or physically, inserting yourself in projects strategically where you can learn or even just shadow and learn, because depending on, for example, within marketing, if you're working in the organic marketing side of things and you're interested in growth, then there may not be a natural intersection point. And so you have to build those relationships within those teams and then find a way to be part of interesting projects. And I think that really helps. If you stay in your roles and you're too afraid to be kind of challenging the scope that you were hired into, then it usually slows you down. And that's how I found success, kind of not just getting promotions, but generally getting more recognition across the organization. This was awesome. Thank you so much. I think I could go on with both of you for like another couple of hours. And thank you everyone for joining. I know I really enjoyed this conversation with Mike and Harit, and I hope our paths cross soon again.
Thanks so much.